Backstage here at the Folktacular, Robert Morgan Fisher's twice a year event, and I'm having a great time. I'm here with Paul Zollo, and I'm really thrilled because Paul did an episode of the Acoustic Lounge a little earlier this year, and I actually get to meet him in person. So, hey, Paul, how you doing?
Good, Chris. Nice to meet you in person, too.
Thanks, man.
This is great.
Cool. I wanted to talk to you. You did a great set up there, and you always bring the house down, and I'm a songwriter myself, as you know, so I'm very impressed and just knocked out by your lyrics and your subtleties and just everything that you do to craft a song. Do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit, maybe your process?
Okay. It's funny, I do interviews with songwriters too and written books on songwriting, and I always ask that question, and it's easier to ask than to answer. But I find songwriting happens in every way. Some people say, it's words first, music first. Any way I can write a song is how I write it. Often I'll come up with an idea for a song or a title or an idea, and sometimes try to see if I could realize that idea. But I find songwriting, Richard Thompson actually put it this way, he said songwriting is like a handshake between the two sides of your brain. You consciously want to guide the song while you're writing it, but you want to let the unconscious part come out too, so you're consciously delving into the unconscious. And so it's a funny art form to work in, but it's great, as any songwriter knows, as you know, when you get one going, it's such a wonderful feeling. And it's kind of like putting together a puzzle, but it's a puzzle that you get to determine how it goes together. And the thing I'm very interested in, I grew up loving Paul Simon, he was my main idol, and Dylan, and later Randy Newman, people like that, Tom Waits for sure, and Joni Mitchell. And I like the idea of trying to write a song about stuff that hasn't been written before, getting content into songs that you might not have heard. And when you grow up and you emulate certain people, like I emulated Simon so much, that seemed to me the whole universe of what you could write in a song, or what Dylan did, another universe. But after a while you realize, no, there are places to go that even Bob Dylan might not have gone, maybe not better than him, but different. And so I like to write songs about historical subjects. I've written about Muddy Waters and Bo Diddley and the song Muddy and Bo I did on the Acoustic Lounge. And I've written songs about Edgar Allan Poe called Baltimore. And I like writing about historical figures. And I just like I like songs that have a lot of nouns in them, details. I hear some songs that are just empty songs, like I feel emotions or I feel feelings. But I want to know more about that. And so I like songs that show you pictures, like Tom Waits, Leonard Cohen, all the people I love. So I'm very, very much about that. Often when I'm working on a song, I'll come up with an idea, but I just don't like the language. And I'll try to find kind of a picture or a symbol or an image that gets that feeling across. And I think that's really lyrically, one of the strongest things you can do. Instead of telling someone, showing someone what you're trying to get to, showing pictures, and then kind of commenting around the images. And, coming up with music, that's a hard thing to talk about, but I'm always trying to come up with new places, there's only so many chords and only so many notes you can use, but there are new places to go with those chords and new things to do. So I'm always trying to kind of stretch what I'm doing musically to make it interesting and do something new. And I just love it. I love writing songs.
As a songwriter myself or musician, even if I'm practicing paradiddles on my drums, I show up to work every day to write, and sometimes the inspiration hits in a big way, and sometimes it's not there for a while. Mm-hmm. Do you ever find yourself, when you have a creative lull, do you still sit down and work the muscle, so to speak, and try and hash things out anyway? Or how do you look at inspiration? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that woman who said that you show up every day, I think that's really important. I think songwriters, if you're going to wait around for inspiration, you might be waiting a long time. But I find the way to get the inspiration is to generate it by doing it. By playing, by working on the music, by playing songs, by listening to music, by keeping that engine going. And I think if you get away from the songwriting too long, and even a few days can be too long, you kind of lose touch with that source. And this is something I think about all the time, because as much as you work, there's those magic moments when suddenly something just comes. And so I've asked every songwriter ever, where do you think those great ideas come from? And Leonard Cohen, I think, put it best. He said, if I knew where the great songs came from, I'd go there more often. And I think we all can understand that. But Leonard would work every day, get up very early and put on a pot of coffee and work. And I think when you do that, ultimately you internalize the song, and the song becomes part of you, and the mind keeps working on it. And then you find the lines that you've been trying to reach, suddenly they just occur to you when you're washing the dishes or when you're driving, when you're not actively pushing it. Because like I said before, it's like consciously trying to delve into the unconscious. If you push it too much, your mind knows it's on and it's supposed to produce something, and that creates a pressure that makes it very hard to come up with anything that's original. And what the most interesting ideas are often those ones that just come out of nowhere. And so I find it's really important to do it all the time. And I know you're doing video too. I'm a photographer too, and a lot of times I'll work on pictures and photographs, and I think just the creative process to keep that rolling. If I don't have any music, I'll work on a picture and suddenly I'll be wanting to pick up the guitar, and ultimately it gets to that great time where you get very receptive, and anything you hear on TV or something that someone says, it all seems to feed into the song. So you got to get to that place where you're receptive and open to what you hear, and where you can get beyond your initial conscious thoughts to the thoughts that are a little deeper. Every now and then, like the other night, I just got words and music at the same time. I suddenly heard the phrase and I heard the music in my head, and I had to find it on guitar. And that's a great thing. That rarely happens. I've had a million nights where I've sat there with a guitar and let me try this in another key or that, and it just goes nowhere. But you can't let those times discourage you or derail you in any way, because everyone goes through that. And that's the thing I've gotten the most out of interviewing so many great songwriters. They all go through that, every one of them. Like Randy Newman, who I just idolize, he said, I'll write a great song and I'll feel great about it for maybe 2 weeks. And then I start to feel bad again, and I think, maybe I've gone bad as a person, and nothing's happening again. And all of them said the same thing. Paul Simon said, sometimes he would sit there when he was writing Graceland and throw a ball against the wall, because that action just kind of freed up his mind, and suddenly the thoughts started to flow. You're trying to get away from the world and get to that world beyond where you can get in touch with the source of songs. Because this world isn't necessarily telling us to write songs. This world's telling us to make a living and get health insurance and pay the mortgage. So you kind of got to get away from that world and get to your own world. And I think the only way you can do that is by doing it all the time, by writing songs all the time and keeping the creative juices flowing, keeping the engine going.
Wow, that's cool. Well, hey, Paul, thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts with all the fans out there, because I know this is going to, a lot of people are going to want to hear what you have to say.
Great, thank you.
So thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Chris. It's fun.